Hello, good morning, and welcome for the SDS weekly webinar. Today, we are going to be in the space of 1 hour talking about developing local authorities. We have a really extensive panel here. We also have a great broad section of attendees. So we're hoping to try and get a really good conversation here with a lot of different balanced views. Just a quick reminder, we do welcome a number of different panelists. We want lots of different backgrounds, and we want a huge amount of balance and diversity on these panels. So we're always looking for more speakers. So if you know someone who you think should be on here, please do let us know and get in touch. So I'm just going to introduce our panel today. So we have Andrew Markham. He's one of the SDS directors. Some of you may know him doing a lot of viability. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Christopher. Good morning, everybody.
Well, welcome again. Yes, we have Joanne Drew. Joanne is Housing and Regeneration, and that is from Enfield. So welcome, Joanne. Thank you so much for coming. And now we also have Jane Abram, Head of Capital Delivery for Tower Hamlets. Very good to have you here, Jane. Welcome. And then we have Andrew Palmer, Service Lead, New Homes Delivery for Winchester City Council. Welcome, Andrew. And then we have Neil Double, the Portfolio Viability Manager from Be First. So before we kick off, Andrew, would you like just to give us an overview of the developments you're seeing in the local authority, the developing local authority sector at the moment? What are the key sort of pressures here?
Yes, good morning, Christopher, again. Welcome, everybody. And so yes, I head up the kind of the new business team at SDS, and obviously predominantly going to do demonstrations of our software, and kind of a couple of years ago started the consultancy side of SDS, or revamped it really. And for the last couple of years now, this has been going kind of strong with a number of consultants that work for us. And you know, a lot of our work has traditionally been in the RP space, you know, helping clients with SQL, profile implementation, etc., etc. But recently, over the last kind of year and a half, has been a lot of work with local authorities. You know, challenges for local authorities is one, obviously, getting your committees agreements to actually buying into the development process and owning it themselves. And I've always seen the kind of conflict between, you know, the local authority kind of understanding what they want and the delivery of the development themselves, and generally that's been around partnerships, you know, partnering with RPs, etc., to deliver these schemes. And the challenges is getting someone's mic needs to be switched off. A lot of background noise there.
Okay, no worries. I'm just going to mute everyone to begin with.
Feedback there. I can hear my that's better. So I think the main driver at the moment is getting a kind of development strategy that is agreed, known across the development department, and then having a vision to kind of complete that. And it's often I get involved with appraisals, understanding development assumptions, and it's not really been bedded down, and we're off running on this development scheme, and the viability is a bit shaky of kind of which way are we looking at it. So I think it's really important to get a development strategy. I think that's a main challenge. Obviously, big challenge at the moment across the sector, not just local authorities, is skills and staffing. You know, I think a skills shortage is definitely an issue, and it seems everybody is a consultant these days, aren't they? If they've got a couple of years experience, then that's it, they're off as a consultant, and then kind of working with 3 or 4 clients. So I think that is definitely an issue. Working with 3 or 4 local authorities has come to me recently if I can place people on an interim basis. So that is definitely a challenge of the sector. And then skill about viability. What is viable? And that good old word. And saying kind of what it means for the local authority, what it means for the private company, what they're trying to achieve, and mass regeneration. You know, a lot of the schemes that local authorities are working on are including big regeneration, higher densities, and these these things take a long time to come to the fore, and then being flexible, reactive to what's happening in the sector, not just on the private side, sales side, but just on commercial space. What we're doing with our commercial space. I was talking to a scheme yesterday morning, and they had quite a big commercial space going on this regeneration. And then it's a case of, well, we need to change this. It's not fit for purpose anymore. So can we be reactive? Can we look at that? And the key things I would always come back to are viability. Stop me if I'm going on too long, Christopher.
That's fine. That's fine.
Is that, you know, when is a scheme viable? You know, and there's a number of measures I would always question and ask that these are covered, and they're not always covered by an appraisal. You know, does it meet the development strategy? Is the cost to value relationship acceptable? Can it repay its loan? Now, local authorities challenge this all the time. You know, some local authorities just serve as interest. Is that the right way for viability of a development scheme? I would argue not. I think it should always pay its debt back, and then we get a loan repaid period. So that's a thing to consider. Does it add value to the organisation? Again, outside of the appraisal, but there's another aspect to that. Subsidy, is it available? What is it? Where are you getting it? Are you signing up to Homes England, GLA? Are you getting grant? Are you going through all that audit process? Shared ownership rules, you know, they're changing. All these things are happening. And then does it adversely upset the kind of business plan? And are the risks unknown? So there's a number of different key aspects of viability that one should look at, and not always answered by the appraisal. But there's some very good appraisal system out there. If everyone's heard about it, it's called Provo.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Right, so, we were going to go to Jane first, but I believe Jane is just having some sort of internet connection issues probably. So we're going to start. Hello, Jane.
No, she's there. Yeah.
Oh, wait.
I think I'm okay. If you want to share, brilliant. I think I'm okay to go.
Excellent. So I'm just going to make you the presenter. We're all going to turn our cameras off, and it is all over to you, Jane.
Oh, are we turning our cameras off? Right, here we go.
Okay. Lovely, thank you. Okay, well, I just thought, in terms of putting in context a little bit about Tower Hamlets, I've been at Tower Hamlets for 4 years. Tower Hamlets has an arm's length management organisation called Tower Hamlets Homes, and it manages 22,000 of council homes on behalf of Tower Hamlets. So the development function, the delivery function sits within the council, and I work alongside the housing client from a delivery perspective to deliver the housing programme. There is, for the next 3 years, we have £350 million approved in our capital programme, and sorry, just moving the screens, I'm confused here. And so that's what we're working with. So I just wanted to cover a couple of things which I think there are 10 here challenges. And they're just things which I think have come up for me, and I think are particular challenges for us in Tower Hamlets. So reaching the whole community in terms of our consultation has been really important, and actually the COVID time has been quite helpful for us. So we've done separate groups for women, we've done separate groups for certain faith groups, and it's been really helpful to make sure we get the communities on board as much as you can. You obviously will always have residents who aren't happy, and particularly comes onto the site constraints, particularly in a very built up area where all through the development process there is an impact on the residents who are living around. So we're balancing whether we focus on regen or estate infill. In the short term, we've done quite a lot of estate infill, and you'll see from the images on these slides, these are ones that have been recently completed in the summer. That the size of the site, all the abnormals, there really is never such a thing as an unencumbered site, so there's a clear impact on cost. The site constraints also lead to impacts on design, which I think, particularly given the white paper and the issue around green space, is key to us. So a number of our schemes, and this one on this particular image has a rooftop play area. That's absolutely fine in terms of giving additional space, but it's right next door to a park, And we need to make sure in some of our future designs whether that is really the right way to go in terms of providing a rooftop play which doesn't address some of the other issues around well-being and things which green spaces would. And as I say, impact on the local community during the development phase. One of the next challenges for us is around procurement. We've used frameworks in the past and we've now set up our own DPS. I don't think it's the answer to all ills. I think we're still going to have some struggles with our own DPS, lots of contractors on them. And again, it's interesting times at the moment. We seem to be getting a lot of responses to our smaller schemes. We've tried batching them up together to achieve economies of scale, but that hasn't always worked. Contractors are pricing quite a risk. And we're also looking at ways in which we can attract SMEs, not just from a construction point of view, but in terms of the consultancy services and things. And there's an opportunity following Brexit, if we're looking for some positives to come out of that, which around things like the procurement note 1120, which gives us the opportunity to perhaps go to a smaller pot to get consultants certainly for works contracts. So they're the first ones. And we move on to. Do we move on? Yeah. So in terms of our contractual arrangements, some of the things which I think are challenging are about how we manage and monitor our contracts, particularly sort of in relation to things that change as we come on to the next point. Having a really good EA on board is absolutely essential, who are acting on behalf of the council, really essential in success. I think there are opportunities in our contractual arrangements around added value, the apprenticeships and local labour initiatives, things that have been around for a long time, but certainly things which members are really keen to ensure that we deliver on, and in particular in relation to the population and the skills level among the Tower Hamlets population and what we're trying to address there, and also social value, what we can achieve in terms of social value from these schemes, contractors making other contributions to communities as a whole. Adapting to change during the life of a project. Again, these are challenging when you've got new regulations, and we've had some particular challenges over the schemes that have been handed over since the 2019 building regs have been updated. So that's been challenging because we've got sign off to building regs that were from 2015, and how we balance that. And you talk about the changes to shared ownership, but we've also got change in terms of the impact on changes to tenure, but also around what members would want us to see. So we're doing, in terms of a mixed tenure, looking now at private sale, which had absolutely not been on the table a year ago. Funding, obviously, that's a really key challenge to everybody. The only having 30% of 1-for-1 right to buy receipts available to contribute to development costs. That's a challenge to us, and is then the pros and cons of grant funding, because we have a lot of right to buy receipt which we need to be spending. Then capacity to deliver, Andrew mentioned that, being able to attract and retain good staff and those having the right skills to succeed in a local authority setting. It is challenging. I've worked in local authorities for most of my working life, and I'm happy to embrace that, but I know for some who've come from even housing association backgrounds do struggle with some of the issues that brings up. Then we've got competing priorities in terms of the funding in the HRA. With our current programme, the 350 million has all the building safety works and retrofitting. It has 16 million pounds worth of decarbonisation works, but there's another 160 million that are required, and therefore has, through the way in which priorities have been currently balanced, enough to fund the whole of the first 1,000 homes and some of the next. The first 1,000 all being delivered by next year. Managing expectations of members is another real challenge for us, and particularly as we enter a pre-election year, and the ambition that members have, and one of the 350 mayoral pledges was to deliver 2,000 homes by next year. Whilst we'll achieve the first 1,000, the second 1,000 will be we'll have planning consent for, but we won't have actually delivered and completed and have new tenants in. And then last but not least, impact of Brexit, the zero carbon agenda which Andrew other Andrew's going to talk about, and the new white paper, and the forever issue about behavioural change. Some of the things that we are, some of the features of our new builds require tenants to perhaps change the way they behave a little bit, and that has been, I mean, I've been in housing quite a long time, and so have lots of other people here, and they'll know that that is a really challenging one. So I think these were just really pointers for discussion, because I'm sure they're a lot of the same things, irrespective of where in the country you are or the size of the authority, all experience a combination of these challenges. And so that's all from me.
Thank you so much, Jane. I've got one question here from Penny Craig from Reigate and Benson. Hello, Penny. Is the Tower Hamlets DPS one that other LAs can gain access to?
Yes, absolutely, they can. So I can send the information on either through for you to circulate to all. But yes, yeah. It is.
Yeah. So yes. What we're going to do is we'll include that in the follow-up. So thank you very much. Interesting impact of Brexit. This is something that I haven't really had a lot of people saying there is going to be a big impact. They were more worried about COVID and other pressures, but you think there's going to, what do you think the key Brexit pressures are going to be?
Well, the first pressure that we saw is European workers not able to come back and start back on site. So we've got some, 2 of our schemes that were due to complete in October have got 12-week delays because they couldn't get enough of their workers back. They were small schemes and it was a small employer. So I think the impact to them was much more significant, because I think our schemes were kind of ahead of the pack in relation to other schemes that they were managing, and they tried their hardest to provide the capacity and the staffing they needed for all the contractors for our schemes first, but they were heavily reliant upon European workers. So we saw that immediately, and we're aware that contractors are stockpiling, or developers are stockpiling. So what will be the outcome in the long term from stockpiling? It may be that, and I think companies across the board are talking about having European offices, and maybe that will help. But yeah, I do think there is going to be an impact. Some might be positive, as I was saying about the issue about appointing SMEs and the procurement note that gives more flexibility. Whilst Tower Hamlets hasn't made a decision as to whether to accept that, approve that, and work with that, it does give a bit more flexibility to in relation to the council's financial thresholds, not the OJU thresholds. So that will be interesting to see. So I do think there is going to be an impact. Yeah, but time will tell.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Jane. I mean, we've already seen, if you're unaware of this, the pound is rocketing. It has had huge investment. We were at 1.41 to the dollar only days ago, and a lot of that is post-Brexit and the vaccine. All the uncertainty around Brexit meant that all the long-term investors took their money out of sterling. So we're seeing a correction from which started back to the referendum. So the pound is strengthening and is due to keep strengthening from what we're seeing at the moment. I'm not sure how that's going to affect construction and building. Probably will somehow in terms of the materials. Right, we're going to go on to Joanne now. Thank you so much, Jane. That was fantastic thoughts there, and a really great way to frame this conversation. I'm now making Joanne the presenter, and we will all turn our cameras off and turn Joanne's on. Attendees go. Parties, presenters go. I've lost one of my window panels. Sorry about this. Can't see the attendees.
Okay.
Polls, handouts.
You can ask her to turn on her camera.
Yes, Joanne, if you turn on your camera, is that? Oh, I can't see Joanne. Okay, so we have, okay, back, right.
Is Joanne there?
Yes, I'm trying to get to, I seem to have lost my panel, which has all the attendees in it. There it is. Okay. Okay, so you are now unmuted, Joanne. You should be able to speak and turn on your webcam. Okay.
Is she there? Ah,
Yes.
there we go.
Yes. Hello, Joanne. Sorry about all of that.
Can't hear you. Is your
Okay,
mic
is that
on?
good?
Just
Yes,
that's better.
perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Okay.
And now upload?
It's actually, it should pretty much lost all my screens. Yeah, so if you full screen it, Joanne, we will be able to see. And we can see it all now. Perfect.
Okay, is that good?
Yes. If you want to full screen it, then is right now showing the whole PowerPoint.
Yeah, okay, just let me move this. Okay, there you go. So many consistent themes with Jane's presentation in Tower Hamlets, as in Enfield, and obviously we're in North London, out of borough, so some differences. So in terms of our challenges, we have had a slow house building delivery rate, which is most recently, like Tower Hamlets, put us in the sustainable development category. I have to say though, a lot of the delivery that has been produced in the borough has been enabled or led directly by the council itself. So it's kind of a real message about the importance of councils taking that direct delivery role. We're a borough of acute housing pressures, so we've got one of the largest homelessness problems in the country. We have more people in temporary accommodation than the whole of the West Midlands. So, and it's a smart move to put that function in one job, which is my job, because the pressures that I experience in managing that area lead me to kind of want to drive the pace of delivering new council-owned homes, which is the other part of my role alongside council housing. So we have geared up in the last 2 years after the HRA debt cap was released to take this direct delivery role. On the screen you can see Meridian Water, which is one of our landmark brownfield sites. It's 10,000 homes, 6,000 jobs, which we are taking the master developer role on. So we are a borough of huge growth potential. Like Jane, the HRA is under considerable pressure, as all councils are facing. So building safety, the green agenda, Decent Homes 2 from the new social housing white paper, all has a large price tag of over 300 million, and we are calling on government to fund those additional burdens, because otherwise that would affect our direct delivery programme, which is so important to us. So a number of challenges in terms of making sure that we can deliver development. It has been so important that this is a top strategic priority for the council. It's led as a political priority by the leader, and it's enshrined in our corporate plan, and we have a good growth housing strategy which develops out the concepts that we want to ensure we are securing through direct delivery. In order to kind of make sure that we had a financially robust approach to development as a local authority, we reviewed the HRA capacity. We wanted to be able to answer the question, how much is affordable to the business plan? So what we did is set out a financial framework, and we can see the kind of measures that we judge affordability against here. And that,
Joanne, sorry to interrupt. I can't see your slides at the moment. We've stuck on the first page.
Okay.
I think you need to full screen it and then page through them. Just on the, I think it's the bottom right, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not here. So shall I try again to upload?
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Got it.
Okay. Financial framework,
Great.
yeah. So
Yes, that's what we're saying.
yeah, so it's important to see this slide because it's got the indicators of viability for our HRA. And what that told us is we've got over the next 10 years about £1 billion worth of capacity that we can utilise for development. And obviously we consider the utilisation of funding for development as the optimum use because it generates an income return for the business plan. But we do that within a framework of scheme-specific hurdle rates. So debt repayment is one of those hurdle rates. So it is a prudent kind of program framework to manage the financial position against. And that gives us a 3,500 homes development program over the next 10 years. So in terms of how we pursue regeneration, because obviously we're dealing with estates, HRA estates, and the issues that Jane has described, but we've come to the conclusion that we need to kind of broaden out our thinking in Enfield in terms of how we deliver regeneration, particularly kind of triggered by the changes in the GLA grant funding regime. So we want to use estate regeneration as a catalyst for securing broader growth in growth areas in the borough. That means we need to lever in additional forms of inward investment. So that will take us to working more closely directly with MHCLG as well as with the GLA, and also with the economic development areas that we have crossing the borough, and also in terms of working to fulfil that those objectives for economic growth through the partnerships that we have with our neighbouring boroughs in particular. So it's triggering us to develop stronger cross-boundary thinking and working with our partners. We also recognise that we can't deliver the scale of housing supply that we need on our own. So we are working with RPs and developers as well. And this year we are launching an RP framework, which we will put a number of schemes through that we can't deliver ourselves at the time and pace that we need. So again, mentioned previously, capacity and expertise for development remains a critical issue for us. We have got a strategy of growing our own because we will not be able to pay to poach and compete against housing associations and developers. So grow your own strategy is our route. We've benefited from GLA capacity funding, which has been really helpful, and I think that is a continued need. We work with the public practice placement service, which brings in talent from the private sector. Also work closely with London Council's housing directors, which is looking at the whole skill piece for local authorities and how we can develop those programs, and also including sharing resources with housing associations. And we're up and open for partnerships with other boroughs, including on MMC delivery as a way of learning from each other, but also creating scale to deliver MMC programs that are required. So I think that's all I'd say about development, and happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Very, very much appreciate that. If everyone, the whole panel, could switch their cameras back on, that would be great. Apologies for the technical issues. I blame me. It was all my fault. I have 4 screens, which seems like a great idea at the time, but then you end up with a lot of things hidden. I'm going to go to Andrew now, because this is our last bit of prepared content before we go into an open discussion. Andrew, you have a paper, your strategic paper, which is just delivered on net zero carbon. This is something which is really, a lot of providers are extremely worried about the net zero carbon. They don't know how they're going to be able to do it, as well as new investment in new and their existing stock. We are looking forward to your strategy and how you're tackling this. Oh, sorry. Once again, we are. Sorry, Neil, I'm just going to have to unmute you. Okay, you are unmuted. Sorry, Andrew, you are unmuted now. Sorry, apologies. Okay, let's start again.
So you can now hear me.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
I'm
good.
not sure how many
That's
more technical mistakes I can make in one webinar, but we're definitely at a record now.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. I'm going for the low tech approach at the moment, so I've got no presentation to share. But I just wanted to say a few words about development strategy and net zero carbon. And just to put this into some form of context, we've been developing in Winchester City Council. We've been developing council housing since 2012. So we did our first development strategy in 2012, which I think amounted to about 4 pages. And it was pretty rough and ready, to be honest with you, but we didn't really have much to draw on. And obviously there were very few local authorities who took the immediate opportunity to develop housing. So that's where we started. And obviously over the years, a lot more local authorities have had experience of developing council homes. We ourselves have developed more experience in developing council homes over the years. And in 2019, we had a change of political administration. And the first thing that the new administration did was to declare a climate emergency. And so one of the immediate direct actions a council can take when it's building new homes is to try and address that net zero challenge. So what we've been working on over the last year is a strategy, a revised development strategy, which addresses these new priorities of the council. And for the benefit of the audience, today that strategy was uploaded onto the council's website. So if anybody wanted to have a look at it, and I know Jane's already taken the opportunity to have a look, you can download the strategy. It will go to our cabinet and members next Wednesday for debate. Alongside that is also how we're going to address retrofitting of our existing stock as well. So there's a couple of interesting papers there that you'll be able to have a look at later. So just in terms of what our main priorities are in the new development strategy, it was to deliver 1,000 homes over the next 10 years. We've managed to find the funding for that. So we've got a 30-year HRA business plan, which allows us the funding to deliver 1,000 homes. And we want those homes to all meet the net zero carbon challenge. And in our initial conversations with our tenants about this strategy, we have tended to move away from the technical terms. So we started on about talking about passive house as a way of delivering net zero carbon challenge, but there was clearly quite a lot of misconceptions about that. People didn't quite understand what we meant by passive house. So we've started to talk about healthy homes and beautiful homes so that we can really articulate at a very simple level what we're trying to achieve. And I think that's really important with a strategy, because too many strategies are written at such a, lots of acronyms and complicated terms that half the time I don't understand. So I'm sure they're not easily digestible by the general public. So we talk about healthy homes, we talk about beautiful homes, we talk about how energy costs are going to be reduced. And as I say, we didn't want to sort of falsify the myths, if you like, of what a passive house is, because tenants were coming forward and saying, well, does that mean I can't open my windows? I can't put a cat flap in? Does that mean there's no fresh air in the property? So I think we've had to that's why we've chosen the sort of strapline healthy homes, beautiful homes, again, just to reflect on the government's planning advice that this is the type of housing we should be building in the future. So I think that's the sort of main content of our strategy and how it differs from what we've done before. And as I say, we've started to have that conversation with tenants about what it actually means to their properties as well. So clearly there'll be no gas in any of our new properties. They will all be heated through electric means or through solar panels. But we need to say that the fabric and the insulation of the properties is so good that, you know, the heating requirements are absolutely minimal. So we've tried to, you know, really stress the positives to tenants and future tenants of what we're trying to achieve. So obviously there's a lot more information and strategy about biodiversity and other things. So, but obviously I encourage people to read it. It's taken us, as I say, 12 months of quite long negotiations with members and tenants to get to the position where we are now. And if it's helpful for anybody else, then, you know, there's no copyright. Please feel free to use it.
We're going to follow up with your strategy in the follow-up. So if you want to send us a link, we'll include it.
Yeah, no problem. We can do that. So that's enough from me, really. I'm more interested in questions people have got of all of the panel, really, about the things we've talked about this morning, because there's some really interesting presentations there and lots of information.
Okay, great. Before I open it up, Neil, I'm going to come to you. Neil, what say you, sir? Is there anything here that you'd like to jump in on? Because obviously I've given the rest of the panel chatters would like to give you that opportunity to jump in here before we go to an open conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher. I think a lot of what I've heard from Jane, Joanna, and Andrew is definitely pertinent for what we're doing in Barking and Dagenham. So I work for Be First, and we're basically the delivery body for the council. So, you know, we're a bit like Jane. We're tasked with building about 4,000 homes over the next 5 years, and we're kind of halfway through our development program, and it's roughly about 1.5 billion of investment. So it's quite large, and you know, it's quite ambitious. And I think kind of I definitely see all of the challenges already mentioned. I think one of the additional challenges, if I'm going to try to add one that maybe hasn't been discussed, is we've got a mixed tenure portfolio. So we've got at the moment our portfolio is about 75% affordable housing, and obviously, you know, the key driver for the council and for members is to deliver as much affordable housing as possible for local people. But obviously the viability challenges that come along with that are significant, and I think looking ahead, I can only see them becoming more challenging, not less. You've got a changing grant landscape with the GLA at the moment. You've got rents that are stagnating or reducing, and you've got costs that are going up. So I think, you know, looking ahead, without being too pessimistic, I can see some big challenges, and I think one of the things that we're looking at is looking at a very long-term investment approach. So we look over 50 years, 50, 60 years in terms of our investments. We also take an approach where we're trying to cross-subsidize different tenures. So we're using our private, we're not doing much private sale, but we're doing quite a lot of private rent. So kind of council build to rent product, and using that as a way to cross-subsidize our affordable tenures. And again, you know, that's really interesting, but it also does come with its own risks. You've got to compete in the marketplace with other providers that are doing a similar thing. So you've got to make sure that your product and your service is spot on if you're going to try and match rents. So I think all of that is a challenge, but cross-subsidy is definitely key. And I think that is ultimately how the council is going to make sure that it can deliver new homes, but also pay the debt down on those new homes over 50 years, because what we don't want to do is leave a debt for future generations. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we're going to be working on in a lot more over the next few years. So I think I'll probably just leave it there, and yeah, it'll be good to hear everyone's questions.
Thank you very much, Neil. Really appreciate that. We've got something here, Joanne Wilkinson from Lancaster. Hello, Joanne. And Joanne said, great to hear lots of authorities around new developments. Any further advice for those needing to regenerate aging stock without Homes England subsidy? Hot potato catch, anyone?
I mean, just if I may, we have only received, we probably developed about 15 schemes so far. Only 2 of them were with Homes England grant. So we found that our priority is to spend our one-for-one right to buy receipts, and obviously we can't mix and match those with Homes England funding. So we've spent a lot of our schemes have been funded through, if you like, surplus rent, in effect, one-for-one receipts from council house sales and from Section 106 off-site contributions. So we've managed to lever in subsidy from all of those areas. So one of the things we found was really important to do was to make sure that when you're developing your local plan and you talk about off-site contributions, that you're able to link those through to new council developments. So I think there's things that you can do within a local authority to help generate those capital receipts. So whereas before there was a rounding up and rounding down of the developer requirements, so say the calculation was 3.4 houses that had to contribute, we'd take 3 houses, but the 0.4 we would take as a capital contribution. So you can build up these little pots that then help subsidise your own council house programme. Is what how we've approached it. Now, whether that will work with other local authorities, I really don't know, but that's what we've done anyway.
Joe's just come back saying we don't raise sufficient in right to buy receipts. Frown, as in smiley face frown. Yeah. Joanne.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, we feel your pain in London as well, because grant conditions are restricting grant for replacement homes. There is some money for obsolete housing. I think what that is making us think of is we have to think more seriously about refurbishment alongside the deep retrofit solutions on the green agenda. So we have to think about that more carefully than perhaps we would have done. And the other thing, I think the Social Housing White Paper is talking about a new decent homes standard. So I think we need to be lobbying government for additional funding for our aged expired stock.
Yeah, there's also fuel poverty, which can be at odds with the carbon zero agenda. I spoke to an asset director who said he had to get a bunch of new heat pumps in, but these were going to significantly increase the cost. So how fuel poverty and the net zero carbon seem to be at odds. Are any of you finding this? Obviously, Andrew, you've talked about passive house, which actually puts it down. If you're not doing passive house, how would you sort of deal with this? Jane, I know you've got a lot of stock in Tower Hamlets. You've certainly got one of the biggest pressures here. What is your sort of game plan on that?
Sorry. I think that the key thing for us in terms of that's the addressing fuel poverty is one of the first things, and I think in terms of what whilst we've only got 16 million in the current programme for decarbonisation work, and that's around addressing fuel poverty is the kind of key element of what we can achieve with the first programme of works that are done. I mean, I think we've got, and I would imagine all of us have got some really aged stock that it really doesn't make sense to be refurbishing. And I think in terms of the conversations we've found with members, you've got to take them down the mixed tenure route, because that's going to be the only way in which you can achieve the regen that they're wanting without the, as you say, the pros and cons that come with grant funding. We're in the same position as Winchester, and I would assume Enfield, in terms of having lots of right to buy receipts. So our challenges are more around how we Homes England, GLA, how we avoid applying for grant, because actually we can afford to do it without. Whilst members want us to demonstrate that we're supporting the GLA in the way that, in accepting grant, actually it puts us in a much more, it's much more difficult for us when we've actually got sufficient right to buys, and we've already passported right to buys onto the GLA because we haven't managed to spend them within the time frame. So it is a really difficult position, a different position.
Chris, can I talk about, go back to that comment? I suppose test viability really stress test it. Go out to 50 years, 60 years, do a review of your assumptions or your thought assumptions with your peers. We can help with that. We know SDS and our consultancy side, we're working with about kind of probably 50, 60 local authorities. And we can help you trying to test viability, and you can then see what you need to do to cross-subsidize to make it work, or what you need to do for your assumptions to do that. And if you're kicking off your program, then you could start at very low base cost basis, management costs, voids and bad debts, these and maintenance, can be incorporated within the team that you probably currently have. So you could argue that you could at least get, say, 200 homes under that parameter, which will reduce and improve, reduce your cost and then improve the viability result. And then, most local authorities are moving out to, 50, as Neil said, 60 years. So Leeds Council I worked with fairly recently moved from 30 years to 55 years. So, all these areas can help viability, and their remit was they wanted 5% of social rents. So we can demonstrate that and really test the water and come up with some product lines that perhaps would work, and that may help.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anyone have anything to add on that before we move on? Okay, so we've got one again from Penny Craig. Have any of you had success buying sites on the open market, or have you used compulsory purchase powers?
Okay, well, I know we've certainly bought sites on the open market, but the issue is around viability in terms of still meeting the members' aspirations for the percentage of affordable housing that we can deliver on those sites. So I guess that's been the bigger challenge, and because of the position our HRAs have been in more recently, we haven't done the level of detailed due diligence on it. The expectation of members has been such that they thought we can deliver a more ambitious percentage of social rents or London affordable rents than we're really able to afford, and so we've moved into a sort of slightly different position now. But we have in the past bought sites on the open market in order to, as I say, and then the other point actually to raise is we can use 30% right to buy receipt for that purchase. So we are using some of that money, another reason to be spending it. I certainly think a couple of the sites we bought were at the point where we were really keen to make sure that we were using as much of the right to buy receipt as we possibly could.
Thank you, Jane. Joanne, I'm going to go to you, and then we'll come to you after that, Neil.
Same issues as Jane in terms of private acquisition. Yes, we quite regularly in regen schemes. But one of our challenges at the moment as a corporate COVID response is the disposal of general fund sites. So obviously we want to appropriate those to the HRA, and there's some interesting accountancy benefits for the general fund in paying off debt from their general fund sales, which then can reduce their debt costs. So it gives them a further benefit of that appropriation. So for us, it's about keeping the land and assets within the family first.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Neil.
Yeah, so we're also buying up sites on the market. We've got a £280 million kind of commercial land acquisition program where we're quite a lot of the time looking at old industrial bits of land that we've still got in Barking and Dagenham. I know lots of London boroughs haven't got so much anymore, but we're outer London, so we do still have some of it, and kind of buying it up either before the market gets too hot, and also working in partnership as well. And I think what we're trying to do there is twofold. One is to take the kind of land ownership so we can control what's delivered, because we're very aware that industrial, we don't want it to necessarily flip entirely to residential. We want to do mixed use neighbourhoods. We want to try to make sure that jobs aren't lost, and to make sure that we can create new jobs and new economic activity in the local area. So by us buying up the land early, we can have some control, and we're using GLA housing zone money for that as well. Obviously, there's conditions, and sometimes the conditions can cause more problems than the funding solves. But looking long term, that buying land off the market can definitely help supplement your program, I think, from our view.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, a couple of points. I'm involved in a few at the moment. Some local authorities around where I live in Guildford area, Surrey, is Section 106. We've been kind of successful with Waverley, kind of picking up those 1s and 2s and 3s that seem the RP boys are not interested in anymore. They're too big for that. So that's quite an interesting concept, and just getting the team kind of thinking differently on an appraisal to offer for land that and be more competitive. That's interesting. I often find I'm involved in Runnymede at the moment with a couple of sites that they're looking at, and there is a kind of a conflict a little bit here of buying a site. Generally speaking, you're down the line, it's got planning, you're at that point where everybody else is involved, and the affordable Section 106 agreement is different in conflict with their development strategy, that they've, the planning person has negotiated 17%, 20% affordable, and your committee want you to provide 35% minimum. So there's that conflict, and can we buy the site, can then we redo it by planning? So there's a lot of extra cost. I mean, go back in my own private days of land buying, then it's option agreements. I think there should be a team that you should get earlier in to some of these schemes and control them themselves, and you've got a different agenda than perhaps others that could be more attractive. So if you get in earlier, and if you have got the cash to do that, then that could be beneficial.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew Palmer.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we've had some success in buying pub sites, and because they're marginal in planning terms, so we are the planning authority, we can take a view as to whether we're going to get consent, because often the pub on an estate will be, can be run down, not used very much anymore. The brewery's looking to get rid of it, but it's got a community use, and we've argued with our planners that affordable housing is a community use. Therefore, we can pick up the site, take the risk, or take a view that we're going to get planning consent to convert that to another community use, which is affordable housing. So we're not buying that site, would not have been offered at market value, shall we say, for housing, just because of those constraints. So as a local authority, we can use, take a view, shall I say, on what the risk of those developments are.
I think that's really what we were trying to get at here. As a local authority, what views can you take? And that's a really great one, Andrew. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have anything to sort of add to that?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Scott.
I was just going to say, if that was in Tower Hamlets, we'd be expected to provide an actual community space as well. And I think that's another thing that's the whole balancing of like having social infrastructure in place and all of that. That's a particular challenge for us. I mean, there definitely doesn't feel like a member appetite to replace. So, for example, the sites that we bought one from the NHS. The ground floor is converted, will be converted, or providing a community space with residential above. So when you're doing the viability, you're already, it's an extra challenge. It's an extra drain, because it's not something that we're able to let at a market rent. We're letting at we're letting at a market rent for a community use, but we're paying an 80% community rent reduction out of another pot. So in effect, only getting 20% in terms of what we would use in our viability.
Thank you, Jane. Anyone else? Anything to add on that? Well, people are very happy with these responses. So it feels to me like we've had a really good conversation. It's a very full conversation as well in the space of 1 hour. So I think we should probably, it seems to me that this is now winding down and we're coming up to 11 o'clock. So I guess what I'd like to do is thank everyone here for such a great conversation, for bringing their ideas to the table and, having the guts to do that, to come on here on a public forum and talk. we really do want more. We want the regulator of social housing. We want them back. We want the CHC. They were here. We've had a lot of great people. We've been asking Homes England since I started these last year to come on, and they promised that they, that they haven't promised anything, but they've expressed an interest when they know things are more certain. And I look forward to that day because we would absolutely love to have them on here just to engage. Really, don't necessarily have to set out anything, but just to engage and listen. So yeah, we are looking forward to bringing you more conversations like this one. So please do stay tuned. Yeah, you're all on 80 shots. Thank you very much, Joanne Drew, Jane Abram, Neil Double, Andrew Palmer. Thank you. We really appreciate your contributions today, and we are going to be following up with the with all the things that we promised. I have them written down here, but yes, I'm wittering now. Right, so everyone have a great week, and we're going to see you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your cheers. Bye.
Bye now.